Hey there. The word tariff is all over the news again. Just recently, in February 2025, US President Donald Trump announced new tariffs on imported goods. And it's not just China this time. The list includes Mexico and even longtime US allies like Canada, Japan, and South Korea. So, what's really going on? You've probably heard the word tariff countless times, but what exactly is it? How do tariffs actually work? Do they work at all? And more importantly, how do tariffs affect you and your daily life? Well, in this video, we're diving into everything you need to know about tariffs, what they are, how they function, their different types, pros, cons, and whether they're effective. Let's jump in. What is a tariff? A tariff is essentially a tax that a government places on products coming from other countries. Sounds odd, right? Why would they do that? Here's a basic example. Let's say the US produces its own bread and sells it for $3. Meanwhile, China can make and export that same bread, same quality, for just $1. Now, if you're an American shopper, you'd probably go for the $1 bread. It's cheaper and just as good. But that's a problem for US bakeries. They can't match those low prices. So, to help US businesses compete, the government steps in and imposes a tariff. Let's say they add a $3 tariff on Chinese bread. Now, when that $1 Chinese bread arrives in the US, it gets hit with an extra $3 tax, making the final cost $4. Compare that to the local $3 bread, and suddenly, American bread looks like the better deal. In simple terms, tariffs make foreign goods more expensive so local products become more appealing. That's the basic purpose of a tariff: protect local industries by making imported goods pricier. Now that you get the concept, let's move to the next section. Types of tariffs. Not all tariffs are the same. There are different ways governments apply them. Here are the two main types. First up, specific tariffs. These are fixed fees placed on a product, no matter its price. For example, let's say the US charges a $3 tariff per loaf of imported bread. If a loaf originally costs $2, the final price becomes $5. If a loaf costs $100, the total becomes $103. No matter the original cost, the tariff stays the same. Then we have ad valorem tariffs, which is just a fancy way of saying percentage-based tariffs. These depend on the value of the product. For instance, if there's a 20% tariff on imported bread and that bread originally costs $10, the tariff adds $2, making it $12 total. If the bread costs $100, then the 20% tariff adds $20, making the total $120. You've probably heard news reports of 100% or even 200% tariffs. How does that work? A 100% tariff on a $10 item means you pay an additional $10, totaling $20. A 200% tariff on the same $10 item adds $20, bringing the total to $30. So, the higher the product's price, the more the tariff adds up. Most tariffs we hear about in the news are ad valorem tariffs because they scale with the product's value. Cheap items get low tariffs, expensive ones get high tariffs. It's more flexible than fixed tariffs. Besides tariffs, countries also use other trade barriers like import quotas, which limit the amount of a product allowed into a country, or strict regulations, which make it harder for foreign products to enter the market. These methods don't involve taxes but still restrict trade. But we'll stick to tariffs since that's our main focus. Pros and cons of tariffs. So are tariffs good or bad? The answer is it depends. Their impact varies with the situation. Let's talk first about the advantages of tariffs. Advantage 1: protecting local businesses. Governments often say they impose tariffs to protect domestic businesses, and there's truth to that. Without tariffs, cheap imports can flood the market, crushing local industries. Take Harley-Davidson, for example. Once, they dominated the US motorcycle market. But Japanese brands like Honda and Yamaha started offering better bikes at lower prices, and Harley's market share dropped to just 15%. In 1983, Harley-Davidson asked the government to impose a 45% tariff on imported motorcycles. That gave the company time to recover. By 1987, they bounced back and even asked for the tariff to be lifted. Advantage 2: government revenue. Tariffs bring in money. Every time an imported product is taxed, the money goes to the government. These funds can be used for public services, infrastructure, or economic development. Advantage 3: national interest and negotiation power. Tariffs can be a bargaining chip. For instance, the U.S. has used tariffs to pressure Mexico on immigration policies. If Mexico complies, tariffs might be lifted. If not, they stay. Tariffs can also encourage companies to move production back home, creating local jobs. Although this doesn't always go as planned. Some companies just relocate to other low-cost countries like Vietnam. Now, let's talk about the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: higher prices for consumers. This is the biggest downside. Remember the Mexican bakery selling bread in the US for $2? If there's a $2 tariff, the bakery raises the price to $4 to cover costs. That extra cost falls on the American consumer. You pay more for the same bread. Disadvantage 2: hurting local businesses that rely on imports. Let's say there's an American sandwich shop that buys the cheaper Mexican bread to keep costs down. Now with tariffs, the bread costs more. If the shop doesn't raise prices, it loses money. If it does raise prices, it risks losing customers. Either way, it struggles. Disadvantage 3: strained international relations. When one country imposes tariffs, the other country might retaliate with their own tariffs. This tit-for-tat response is called a reciprocal tariff. If it escalates, it can lead to a full-blown trade war, damaging trust and cooperation between nations. So, tariffs can protect jobs, industries, and government income, but they can also raise consumer prices, hurt businesses, and damage international relations. Now, let's look at the final question. Do tariffs actually work? Sometimes they do, but often they don't work the way policymakers expect. Here's a simple story to explain. Imagine two countries, Cookie Land and Pie Land. Cookie Land is famous for its chocolate chip cookies, and Pie Land makes the best pies. People from both countries love each other's products and trade happily. One day, the Cookie Land government notices that more citizens are buying pies from Pie Land. Cookie Land's pie makers complain they can't compete. So, the government imposes a tariff on Pie Land's pies to make them more expensive. The idea is to help local pie makers. First, it works. More people buy local pies. But then, something happens. With less competition, Cookie Land's pie makers stop improving. The quality drops, but customers have no choice. Cafes in Cookie Land that used to sell Pie Land's premium pie struggle. They either raise prices or lower quality by switching to local pies. Meanwhile, Pie Land sees its pie sales drop and retaliates by placing tariffs on Cookie Land's cookies. Now, Cookie Land's cookie businesses start losing money too. The once happy trade turns into a tariff war, hurting businesses and consumers on both sides. So, do tariffs work? Sometimes, especially in the short term, but they can backfire, especially if countries retaliate or companies shift operations elsewhere. And there you have it, a full breakdown of what tariffs are, how they work, their pros and cons, and whether they're effective. With the US once again making headlines in April 2025 with new tariffs, it's important to understand how these policies affect not just countries, but also businesses and you. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And let me know in the comments. Do you think tariffs help or hurt the economy? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.